Have you ever wondered if a message in a bottle could truly find its way to someone? What if that bottle carried not just a note, but the hopes of a heart sent across a vast expanse of water? This is a story about that kind of hope, about a love that tried to bridge the impossible. It all started with Liam, a young artist who lived in a small cottage on a windswept coast. Every day, he'd look out his window, across the shimmering sound, to the faint outline of the land on the other side. That distant shore was more than just a piece of land to him. It was where Ilara lived. He had met her only once, during a summer festival that brought their two communities together. It was a fleeting encounter, a shared dance under a string of lights, a conversation that felt like it could last forever. But the festival ended. The boats went their separate ways, and the sound once again lay between them. For Liam, that brief connection sparked something he couldn't ignore. But in those days, communication wasn't easy. There were no phones in their small villages, and the mail ferry was infrequent and unreliable. Desperate to keep the memory of their meeting alive, to tell her how he felt, Liam turned to the sea itself. He began to write. He poured his heart onto small scrolls of paper poems about her laugh, sketches of her eyes, promises of the future he dreamt of. He would carefully roll each one, tie it with a red ribbon, seal it in a glass bottle, and cast it into the outgoing tide, whispering a prayer that the currents would be kind. On the other side of the sound, Ilara, a librarian with a love for old stories, often walked the beaches. She remembered the boy with the artist's hands and the intense gaze. She'd found herself looking out across the water too, wondering if he ever thought of her. The days turned into weeks, and the memory began to feel like a fading dream. She started to believe their meeting was just a passing moment, a beautiful but temporary chapter. Life was pulling her in a different direction. Her family was arranging for her to meet a suitor from her own village, a practical match that made all the sense in the world. One blustery afternoon, while walking along the shore after a storm, something caught her eye. It was the glint of glass nestled among the seaweed. Curious, she picked it up. Inside, she saw a scroll tied with a red ribbon. Her heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, she uncorked the bottle and unrolled the message. It was a poem, a beautiful, heartfelt poem about a dance under the stars. At the bottom was a small, exquisitely detailed sketch of her own smiling face. There was no name, but she knew. She knew it was from him. Over the next few months, more bottles washed ashore. Each one was a piece of Liam's soul. He wrote about his day, the colors of the sunset, his loneliness without her. He drew pictures of the life he imagined for them in his cottage by the sea. For Ilara, these bottles became a secret treasure. They were a lifeline to a feeling she thought she had lost. The arranged courtship felt hollow and empty in comparison. The man her parents chose was kind, but his words were plain and his eyes held no fire. How could they compare to the poetry of a man who sent his love across the sea? But the ocean is a fickle messenger. For every bottle that reached her, how many were lost to the depths? How many were shattered on rocks or carried off by distant currents to shores unknown? Ilara began to worry. She would spend hours scanning the horizon, hoping to see a new glint of glass. Sometimes, weeks would go by with nothing. During these long silences, doubt would creep in. Had he given up? Had he forgotten her? She had no way of sending a message back. The helplessness was agonizing. She was living on fragments of a conversation, whispers in a bottle. Meanwhile, Liam was growing desperate. He had sent over 100 bottles, depleting his savings on paper, ink, and the glass he had to buy from a traveling merchant. He saw the seasons change, and with no word back, his hope began to dwindle. He imagined his messages lost at sea, or worse, found by someone else, his intimate words becoming a stranger's curiosity. His art suffered. The vibrant colors he once used to paint the sea turned muted and gray. The sound, once a symbol of possibility, now felt like an insurmountable barrier. He was on the brink of giving up, convinced his romantic gesture was nothing more than a fool's errand. Back on her shore, the pressure on Ilara was mounting. Her family saw her preoccupation with the beach as childish. They pushed her to accept the suitor's proposal, to be practical and secure her future. Torn between the tangible reality of a life planned for her and the fragile, sea-tossed promises from a man she barely knew, She felt trapped. One evening, clutching the latest bottle she had found, she made a decision. This couldn't go on. A love built on chance and ocean currents was no foundation for a life. She had to choose. The next morning, she walked not to the beach, but to the small dock where the mail ferries sometimes stopped. It was a risk. The journey was long and she didn't know what she would find. What if he wasn't there? What if he had moved on? But she knew she couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. She had to cross the Sound herself. After a long, choppy voyage, she stepped onto the opposite shore, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She asked the locals for a young artist who lived by the sea, a man who drew sketches and loved the sunset. They pointed her toward a small cottage on the cliffs. As she approached, she saw him. He was standing on the edge of the cliff, his back to her, holding a single bottle. He looked thinner, and the hope she remembered in his eyes seemed to have dimmed. He was about to cast the bottle into the sea, perhaps his very last one. "Liam," she called out, her voice carried by the wind. He froze, then turned around slowly, his eyes widening in disbelief. He thought he was imagining it, that the sea was playing tricks on his lonely mind. But there she was, real, standing right there. He dropped the bottle, and it rolled harmlessly into the grass. He ran to her, and she ran to him. They met in a breathless embrace, the sound of the crashing waves their only witness. He held her as if he was afraid she might disappear. "You got them?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I got 'em," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I got your messages." She reached into her bag and pulled out a handful of the scrolls, the papers soft and weathered by their journey. He looked at them, then back at her, and a slow, brilliant smile spread across his face. The hope he thought was lost came rushing back, stronger than ever. The distance between them had been vast, the method of communication uncertain, but their connection had defied the odds. It wasn't the sea that had brought them together. Not really. It was their own courage. His courage to send his heart into the unknown, and her courage to cross the water and find the answer for herself. Their story wasn't just about messages in a bottle. It was about refusing to let an ocean of uncertainty keep them apart. And from that day on, they never had to send a message across the water again. They were finally on the same shore. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more tales of love and connection. See you in the next video.